Cosmological dualism. Many religions and philosophical systems include a form of cosmological dualism. In this form of dualism, the universe is separated into two different realms, the tangible realm and the intangible realm. The first of these includes everything that we can experience using our senses, whereas the second one is composed of things that are not observable through the senses. This can be understood as the realm of God, or the gods, or it can be the realm of real and enduring things, such as in Plato's concept of an ideal plane. In practice, such a dualistic worldview tends to presuppose that God cannot interact with the tangible world. For the ancient Greeks, this often took the form of God creating the universe before time began, or even that the universe is uncreated, just like God. Ever since that time, God has not actually interacted with the world. In fact, in some systems, God is not even aware of the world. Lest we think this is only an ancient idea, Isaac Newton subscribed to a dualistic separation between God and the world. For him, the universe was a closed system of cause and effect. Any interaction of God that disrupted this order would be considered a miracle, as was often the definition at the time. Because of this, Newton did not think this was really possible. To illustrate Newton's cosmological dualism, we might point to two examples in his thought. Newton made a sharp distinction between what he called relative apparent time and space, which is what we all see and experience, and absolute mathematical time and space, which formed a kind of grid through the universe by reference to which astronomical calculations could be made. He was unable to bring these two ideas together, and they sat together in an uneasy relationship until relativity theory, championing a unitary view of the universe, finally redefined the terms and eliminated any notion of absolute space and time. The second example is that Newton saw space and time as containers in which things existed, and he identified this container with the mind of God. Because of this, Newton could not make sense of the Christian conviction that God became a human being in Jesus. For him, God could no more become a creature than a bucket could contain itself. And so he took sides with Arius against Athanasius and the rest of the church. More on Arianism in chapter 6 on the Trinity. This understanding of the world is disastrous to both Jewish and Christian faith, because the Judeo-Christian tradition affirms that God does indeed interact with the world. At the very least, this tradition believes that God created the universe, not out of logical necessity, but out of freedom and love. God did not have to interact with that which is distinct from himself, but chose to do so while yet remaining distinct from that created world. This is affirmed throughout the entire biblical canon because God is continually cited as manifesting his presence among the Israelites and among the apostles. And yet, even though God does indeed interact in this way, there is no confusion of any kind between God and the world. However one interprets the relationship between God and the world, one cannot twist the Jewish and Christian scriptures to support a pantheistic view which identifies God with the world. In any case, the Incarnation shows us that a cosmological dualism is a fundamentally inappropriate way to understand the relationship between God and the world. We are not free to presuppose that God does not interact with the world because God has indeed done so, in Jesus if nowhere else. Not only has God done this in the abstract, but in the very concrete person of Jesus of Nazareth. It is simply impossible to maintain both that Jesus is the fullness of God in flesh, and that God does not interact with the created order. If we try to fit Jesus into a cosmologically dualist framework, we can come to no other conclusion than that in Jesus we are confronted with something other than the God of the universe, in whatever form it may take, such as Arianism, where it is really not God who interacts with us, or modalism, where God never really interacts with us. See chapter 6 for more on these views, which fundamentally destroys Christian faith as presented in the New Testament and believed by the Church.